Okay, welcome to part 5 of Hockey Cards 101, our special podcast series where we try to take the most important topics that would help any new hockey card collector have a more successful start in the hobby, maybe save a little money by not making, a lot of the way we learn, Troy, is by losing money. So if we can save you a little bit of money along the way, shorten the learning curve, and really help you be set up to have the collecting experience you want. This is as I mentioned, our 5th part in our series. To this point, we've done part 1 was an overview of the hockey hobby. Part 2, we looked at all the different types of cards and explained how card condition works. Part 3 was about the brands and sets that are most typical that you'll see for hockey card collectors. And then our last episode of this series was on e-Pack, which we had Daniel Machado from Upper Deck on. This one, Troy, is a little scary. I'm just going to admit right off the bat, because I don't know how you put it, man. It gets into, I guess, maybe stuff that could be considered a little bit personal. There's a little bit of a mental health aspect to it. But as you and I have talked and reflected over the past year in doing the show, we've seen many wonderful things about hockey cards and sports card collecting in general. And it's a hobby we love and we're very passionate about it. But there can be some negative consequences too. We've seen some people where it's maybe gone a little bit too far from an obsession standpoint, or they maybe spent a little bit too much money. And so we thought, as we're trying to help people get their start in hockey card collecting, that maybe it would be a good idea to talk about a healthy collecting experience and habit. Did I do a good job of introing the topic, Troy, or before I
think so. Yeah, okay. You did a great job.
Kind of feel like I'm dancing around because, like I said, I'm a little nervous about it. And because we wanted to get into healthy collecting habits, and it does broach on mental health, and it does broach on stuff that can be considered very personal, we thought, boy, maybe we should find a expert. I know you love that word, Rob. That's somebody that can help us kind of tiptoe navigate these little bit of murky waters as we talk about this. And that, of course, is Rob Girard, who most everybody knows in the sports collecting world as a sports card therapist. You're not only a hobbyist and very active, and you have a podcast that we'll let you talk about throughout our show too, but you're also a licensed therapist. So welcome to our Hockey Cards 101, part 5. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us.
Josh, Troy, I appreciate you guys having me on. We were talking a little bit before about the series that you guys are working on, and my answer was, that's genius. I love it. And then I started asking you guys questions about it because I love how it's like the 101 and then the master's level. And yeah, the word expert, I definitely don't like. This is something, as far as just mental health in general, something I do for a career. I'm definitely a professional. I'm licensed. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, but an expert, that's big shoes to fill, but I'm definitely a work in progress, and I'm learning something new every day.
Well, I'm not a therapist, but I know enough about the human mind to know that nobody even really knows how it works. So really probably nobody is truly an expert when it comes to our brain and how it affects our personality and how we act and go through and live our life. And so our hope here today, and just to be really clear, is that whether you're starting your collecting experience, you're thinking about getting into hockey cards, you've been doing it for 10 years, to maybe give you some tools or tips or warning signs to know whether if it's within yourself or somebody you've met in the hobby or a close friend, that if somebody's going down a path that may not be the most healthy route, that we can, first identify the potential situation, and then maybe some ideas on how to help, whether it's yourself, like I said, or somebody get any help or guidance that they might need along the way. And I kind of asked you this before, but I want to do it while we're recording. As a licensed therapist, is this a topic that you've seen talked about much in the hobby, Rob? Or is it something that we just kind of, maybe people know is there and haven't really decided to go down this road yet?
Yeah, and that's a phenomenal question. I think what I would say is the topic that we're really talking about, right, is spending and how much we're spending and financial responsibilities. And we're talking about a lot of these hard questions here. And I know on my show, I'm like 165 episodes in, and I had like 40 episodes of another show. So I'm like over 200 shows in. I definitely, throughout the life of my podcast, have sprinkled in little bits of information about overspending, kind of habits to look at. people say like, well, what grade should I buy? My answer is always, well, the highest one you can afford. The highest one you could afford.
Yeah.
Don't overspend on something. I think it's something all of us can identify with. So I definitely sprinkled it in over the course of the last 2 years quite frequently. I never dedicated an entire episode to it, but I tell you what, when Sports Card Dad, who has a pretty big YouTube channel, about 2 months ago, I think he released a video talking about his sports card addiction and how it's impacted his family and everything like that. And it was like real. It was real. And he came on my radar right then. Right then, I was like, wow, this is a phenomenal video. It's a great conversation. And I actually just linked up with him, and now we're kind of starting to make some content together. But if it wasn't for him dropping the realest video of the year, I probably wouldn't have known who he was. So it's
I saw
out
that
there.
video when it came out. It was very authentic, and it was raw, and it was real, and you could tell there wasn't any varnish that he had put on he was just kind of dropped the curtain and let people know what was going on. And at the time I was thinking how much courage that took, right? Because there is a level of projection that we all try to do, especially from content creator perspective. And anyone on social media, right? You present the best possible part of yourself and tend to hide maybe some of the darker sides. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, and we'll probably link to that in here too. The one thing though that I really wanted to do before we talk about some of the negatives, especially because this is a content series for people that we're excited about that are getting into the hobby, is I don't want people to think that, oh man, I shouldn't participate in hockey card collecting or in sports card collecting. And so I'm just going to real quickly run through what I think are really the core benefits. And you guys can kind of chime in and let me know if there's anything I forgot or anything that you'd want to add as well, because we love the hobby. That's why we're all sitting here today. And I think that you get a deeper connection to sports or Pokemon or whatever your passion is through your collecting experience. And I've definitely felt that. And like Troy and I have gotten really into vintage hockey cards over the last 6 months, and you really understand history, right? And it's not even just sports history. It's American history and Canadian history in the case of hockey, as we learn about some of these players and just kind of an understanding of how the game came to be. And then I think too, like I don't even know how I feel about this, but some people say that sports card collecting are like modern art pieces, where you had painters back in the Renaissance era, that these athletes are the champions, and we use these cards and how they're constructed and designed, and the scarcity as really a way to appreciate sort of our modern culture. From like a abstract perspective, those are some of the benefits that I think exist in the hobby more tangibly. It's an awesome community. I don't know how much hockey collecting you do, Rob, but the hockey card community is amazing. The people are so nice. And so and it's been really our experience over the last year, really entering the space in a more public way. It has really been fulfilling because people have been just so nice to us. What do you say, Troy?
Yeah, one thing I was gonna say is that the amount of people that have reached out with great words, nice words, support, and even from people that we look up to in the hobby that have reached out with, when we ask them questions, they'll answer them. Jeremy Lee, we brought up earlier, he has been extremely helpful to us and has accepted us with open arms for any questions we ask, and just the whole community has been fantastic.
Jeremy Lee is incredible, and really in general, I can echo everything you said, how incredible the hobby is. I was doing some kind of like YouTube live a couple weeks ago with like 3 or 4 content creators. They become really close friends. So anyways, and one of them said, man, the hobby is so full of negativity and hate. And this was on YouTube live. And I said, I don't think so. I think you're wrong, man. Like, and he's like, no, man, it is like, and I'm like, took a step back and I said, listen, I definitely have absorbed some negativity. It's like the more known your brand gets, I'm sure Jeremy has talked to you guys about this, immediately it's like people you were cool with 6 months ago they don't want to even talk to you for whatever reason. But I said, I don't know, man. Like, I think maybe by putting ourselves out here, like with a podcast, with a show, it's like, I love getting good DMs and good conversations in person about what was on the show, but it kind of comes with the territory. If you're going to put stuff out there, you cannot expect people to be 100% positive. And just because a negative comment might come my way, I don't know, maybe they have a point. They could be right, mm-hmm. right? I mean, like, I'm not perfect. Overall, though, I think far and wide, it's 90 to 95% truly positive in the hobby. It's like, I don't want to let the one or two bad apples spoil the bunch, though.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think that you can even think about this in terms of both like the micro and the macro level. So I would consider like the macro more like if you have a social media presence or if you connect with people online. But Troy and I both have kids. So I have a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. Troy has kids too.
And crap, man, you look younger than me. You have kids that old? You must have got started at 10.
Not that young. I'm not that young. But we connect over cards. My son loves basketball cards. And so it's just a way that a couple times a week, he'll be watching videos or we'll be looking up cards together. And so this is, again, just some of the things that I think is really such amazing about this hobby is that it does help people connect in a good way. And then to move on, I guess I would say, another benefit of the hobby is, and for people like me who like puzzles and like to like scorecards and are competitive, it is gamified. These cards have value. They kind of operate like in the stock market. As much as many hours as you can possibly spend studying, you can never uncrack the code, right? And so there's constant stimulation that comes with, I think, being active in the hobby. And from my perspective, that's, I guess, how my personality works. That's been pretty rewarding too. I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to add, but I just wanted to start before we get into more of the probably more negative stuff. Just a reminder that this is a hobby we love and it is amazing. And we're not trying to convince anyone not to do it.
Troy, you want to touch on it first?
Yeah, I just say, I reiterate everything Josh said. Again, I hope people listening to this understand the hobby is great. You make of it what you put into it. But the reason for this show is also, too, to remind people that there is an other side to it. And we want to touch on that. But remember, there's a lot of positive. And like Josh said, the whole kid thing. I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. Same thing. We've bonded over cards. I told the story on our podcast. I walked into my daughter's room the other day. She had all her hockey cards on the floor, spread out, organizing them, putting them. They were already in binders, so she was taking them out and redoing her organization. She wanted them by goalies first, and then all this other stuff.
I've done that countless times in my life.
Yeah, so it's just fond memories. I'll remember that forever. I will always remember that, walking in the room and just seeing them all spread out. 15.
Wow. So she's past the, like, okay, I'm looking up to my daddy. I'm 7 years old, and he's gotten me Pokemon cards or my own hockey cards. She's 15. She could think for herself.
Yeah,
right?
She's got her hockey cards, and she's getting really into Marvel cards. She really likes Marvel. Of course, she got a present of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse cards. And, of course, the box she has, she pulls a Haley Steinfeld autograph. So now she's all excited. I'm like, oh, no. Just remember, that doesn't happen every box. This is like a one in, 300 pack thing. So just remember that.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. We all have kids, right? And there's a lot that we have going on. And in order to just get any free time, I really feel like I have to schedule my free time, And one thing that I truly believe is an ingredient in happiness and in self-help in general, it's balance, right? And having balance. It's like, for the most of us, we all know we have work, we have family, we have friends, we have some sort of maybe religion, spirituality. I mean, I don't know. Most of us have something, right? But I truly believe you need a hobby. You need something that is just for you, that you can be selfish about and not feel guilty about. And in return, I know I try to always encourage my wife, like, go out, go do something. I got the kids. Don't worry about it. Because I want to make sure that it's kind of an even playing field. I don't want to be the only one having a hobby, because then it'll be an issue. But if she has a hobby too, so it's like, it's a nice balance. And it's like, I want my wife to have a life outside of our family to an extent. So, I mean, I think we all kind of need that balance. We all need to take time away from our responsibilities. And to an extent, I was talking with Sports Card Dad about this on one of our episodes. Collecting is probably like the one thing in our lives that we have a little control over, right? Like, we don't have control over our job with our bosses. I know I don't have control over my wife. I don't know about you guys. Kids, same thing. It's like they operate on their own time. But when it comes to the hobby, I can't control everything that happens outside of me, but I can control everything that comes and goes through my Zion box, though. And that's pretty cool.
It's funny you said the word balance, because that's the word that has been resonating through me. And my dad, for my whole life, has really harped on balance is the key to life. If you look at when you get problems in life, there's typically an imbalance that you'll find. And I think as we kind of start to talk about how the hobby can get out of balance for people, that really is the core. And I'm a marketer by trade. And one of the things that I know, Rob, is that to some extent, the game is almost rigged to prey on our weaknesses and to create imbalance. Because there's the lottery fantasy with cards. Well, if I buy a $150 box, I might get a $10,000 card. And that's very compelling. Or if I've been in breaks and I keep buying spots and I'm not getting cards and I'm like, if I just get one more, it's kind of like the horse track mentality, right? The next race, I might come out ahead. And I guess even beyond financially, how many hours are you spending? So many hours locked in your room or office or hobby area where you're no longer giving whether it's your work or your family or your friends, your personal physical health, the amount of attention that it deserves. And I don't know how you guys feel, but I just feel like that, man, this hobby can really suck you in if you allow it to.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, the fact that your father preached to you about balance as a kid growing up, that's much better advice than my old man ever gave me. I think the best advice my dad gave me was don't get arrested and don't die.
That's not bad advice, but
my dad definitely wasn't talking to me about balance. I know that. But yeah, I mean, I think to your point exactly, man, anything that feels good, it's human nature. It's human nature that anything that feels good, we're at risk of abusing, because who doesn't want to feel good and who doesn't want to feel good a lot? And when it comes to the amount of time spent and the amount of money spent, the amount of time spent, I think for the most part, we can listen to the wife or the girlfriend. We can kind of tune her out as she's yelling at us about how much time we spend with cards. We can do that, but it's really hard to hide from the bank account and the amount of money being spent. So some signs that you might have an addiction with cards, and to an extent, I think most of us do. I know an addiction to cards is something I've probably been fighting the better part of 3 years, without a doubt. I think it ebbs and flows. It goes in waves. Sometimes I have a really good couple weeks where I could just kind of stay off eBay or stay off PWCC. And then other weeks I'm like, man, I'm going ham. Because all of a sudden FOMO misses out. I come across a new set or a new card I like. But when I think about how do I know like spending might be a problem, I would say if you were constantly thinking about how you're going to move money and cards around in order to fund your next bigger. Now, I know a lot of us go and think about those things, but if it's something you're obsessing on, that's probably an issue. You know what I mean? And just not being able to stop buying cards. And that's something that I've experienced too. And I still experience. Yeah. Sometimes it's really hard to stay disciplined. I would love to be the person that's like, okay, you know what? For the month of May, everything I would spend on cards, when May 30th comes, Memorial Day weekend, I'm going to spend that entire amount of saved up money. I wish I could do that. I don't even really have the discipline to really slow down on spending sometimes. It could be hard. It could be really hard. So I think that's why for me what's worked a lot is relationships in the hobby. And I've been able to kind of trade up into bigger cards. You know, I'll pay half cash, half card. Half cash, half card. And for a lot of times that works with people. There's a lot of warning signs. And I'm curious, like Troy, have you dealt with the overwhelming urge to spend on cards when you're like, I should not be buying cards right now?
I've definitely had the urge. And even today, I went out to one of the online sites and actually put in a bunch of stuff in my cart. And I actually did it just to see what the total was. Saw the total and was like, nope, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So, I mean, I wanted to buy a bunch of stuff because a lot of stuff was on sale. And I'm like, oh, I can get it at a great deal. But then I started thinking.
Tell me what's one card or product you had in the cart today?
2020-21 SP Signature Edition or Signature Legendary Edition. I can't remember. I never say it right.
Signature Edition Legends. It's a newer hockey product that's kind of awesome. And
yeah, it has nothing but
signing it in a low key way.
yeah.
Oh, I'll convince you to buy it. No, but as I kind of reflect, Rob, on what you're saying, not only can I identify with it, but I hearken back again to the purpose of the series, where I try to put myself, if I was starting today in the hobby, I think one of the things that I would do is I would honestly create a separate checking account, because the word that's running through my mind is mindfulness here. And be really mindful about how I'm going to approach the hobby. And I would transfer money. And then into that and a set amount and just tell yourself that, okay, this is it. And then kind of force my way into the hobby or how I grow in the hobby to kind of live off of its own little ecosystem, if that's a good way to put it, right? So if I have $5,000 of cards sitting around that I'm not appreciating, but I want a $5,000 card, well, then I now have to work to sell those or to trade them and not just take more money out of savings and put it into and just acquire more. Because, and I don't know if you're schooling or education as you became a therapist, it's like there's something about our brains that we're much more acquisition driven than we are appreciation driven, right? We just seem to tend to want more and more and more. But I would venture most collectors spend very little time actually appreciating what they already have.
Well, the chase is addicting. Oftentimes the chase is the funnest part of the card is trying to track down what it is that you are doing. I'm definitely a collector first. I mean, I've really slowed up my setting up at shows in the last 6 months. I still set up at probably like one show a month. Prior to that, I was doing 2 to 3 shows a month, and that's a big difference. And I'm slowing down. So like my best friend in the hobby, Ken from Sports Card Lessons, him and I, we step together all the time. And whereas him, he's like, no, I'm content. I love the flip. You know, I really want to make sure I make money today because I'll go to a show and say, I don't even care if I make a sale because I'm looking down and I really don't want to sell any of these cards. And I have a bottom row in my case. I call it my bottom row cards. And those are cards that are not for sale, but they're just there. They're there to kind of show off. I breathe, give them some fresh air. You know, people hear about them on the podcast, so they always make comments about seeing them in person then. But I've turned in this, like, really, I've been moving away from the acquisition. And I never heard it said that way, Josh. You know, we're more acquisition driven than appreciation. But I love that, man. I definitely love that. And it sounds like, marketing lingo. It sounds like really good stuff. No, but it sounds like, but the thing is, I can use that in group tomorrow. I have a group scheduled tomorrow. I can use that tomorrow in my group and have it make sense about self-care. Because when it comes to shopping money, like, you know, that whole thing, that's considered a major secondary addiction. So the main addictions, you know, are like heroin, crack, cocaine, alcohol. Those are the mind-altering, life-altering, dead or alive type addictions. Then they have secondary addictions, you know, which is like sex, food, and shopping's one of them. Shopping is definitely one of them. So it doesn't matter if we are making a small purchase on eBay or the wife is making a small purchase online at Target. It's still the acquisition.
You say that too. It's like, I know all of us have run into this where you and a lot of times it's like a joke or a meme, but people will say that, well, I use PayPal to hide the purchases from whether it's my wife or a significant other or something like that. And I'm just trying to think of now, like, what are the warning signs? Like when you know that it's, I think we can start within ourselves first and then maybe move on to others. But I don't know what, I'll let you guys chime in too, but we typically know when we're doing the right thing and we're getting in trouble. And so I just don't know. I'm not smart enough, I guess, to know, like, how do you know for yourself when you're kind of at that point where you might need help?
Yeah, and I think there are many signs, and I'll try to keep them very simple. I would say I already talked about always kind of playing in your mind that mental chess game of how you're going to move money around, how you're going to afford this card, anything like that. So anytime you're making mental moves about moving money around, doing that on a regular basis, I would say there's probably some sort of issue there. Not being able to stop buying cards, feeling regret or guilt after buying something. If you bought a card and you're already, I think all of us at some point or another have probably made a bid or an offer on some card we never thought they would take. That happened to me on a PWCC thing. I had no idea how much a card was going to go for. I well overestimated it. And I said, you know what, if I can get it for this, I think I would do it. So I put in my bid, and sure enough, the next morning I saw that I won the card. And immediately I had buyer's remorse because I said, if I got the card for this low, then I probably overestimated the value. I probably completely misjudged it. What the hell did I do? I paid it because I don't want to get kicked off the site. It's, I put in the bid, I pay it. But, so I think having regret about it, making purchases and not having a way to pay for it, right? Like not being able to pay for what it is you just purchased. I was there. And the crazy thing is it's almost like, to an extent, as a content creator, I was almost getting encouraged to do like crazy things like that. Because when I first started out, I could remember one of my best well-received episodes up until that point was me talking about how I'm a big wrestling collector, a big Hulk Hogan collector. And I was talking about how I bid on a card and won it. The card was a 1982 Wrestling All-Star Hulk Hogan card. It's his like true rookie. And I won the card for $1,100, but I didn't have $1,100 in card money, right? I might have had it in like family money, but I didn't have that available in card money. So immediately I went on Facebook and went on Instagram and sold like 3 LeBron rookies for under comps. And then I based an entire episode around that. And at the same time, I made it into like, not like a meme, but I made it into like a story with like grids and a picture that I could post on Instagram. And I got so much feedback from it. People loved hearing about how I won a card and then scrambled for the next 2 hours to sell a couple cards and then pay the invoice.
Sure, they could identify with it.
Exactly. Right? So people must have identified with it, because to that point, that was probably my most well-received post and show.
It's kind of funny as you think, like, from the content creator perspective. It's like, if you really want to juice like the YouTube algorithm, the perfect video is, I bought a $40,000 box of cards and lit it on fire, right? I mean, that's the, so there is all these temptations. And I think too, it's not like your story about maybe overbidding for a card and then regretting it. But then there's also just, I go back to the way that these auctions work, right? Is that they stoke our competitiveness. I'm going to go and bid on this. I'm comfortable spending $100 on this card. So I'm going to go bid 100. There's 5 minutes left in the auction. I'm good. Then you get the notification you're outbid. You're like, what do you mean I'm outbid? Nobody's going to beat me. Now it's 110. Then you get outbid again. And then it really, like I said, it's engineered to prey upon our weaknesses and our impulses and to stoke our competitiveness to the point where now maybe you spent $175 on a card that you only had $100 for. It happens almost to everybody in those cases. Okay, you gave some great warning signs that someone can recognize in themselves. What do I do, or what should I do if I have those thoughts? If I'm like, I'm moving money around, I'm not being honest with my wife about what I'm spending to get back on track, what would you recommend?
I think the politically correct answer and the real answer is to tell on yourself. Tell your wife, kind of come clean before it just snowballs out of control. I've heard stories of people having sit downs with their wives and talking about like, okay, this, that, and the third. And this is how much we have to spend. This is how much you have to spend. It's like, there have been a couple people online that have been open about that. And then I think I just recently saw online a few months ago, did you guys hear that story about that police officer that ended up getting, or he had like a government job, I think, and he got fired for doing Uber Eats on company time because he had a company car. It was like a government vehicle, I think. And it was to fund his sports card addiction, he said.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's not good.
So, yeah, I think just telling on yourself. This is something that I try to tell myself as well as I'm always preaching it to clients. It's that like secrets die in the light and they grow in the dark. They're like mushrooms. Yeah. So they die in the light. So you got to uncover that stuff. You uncover to recover.
Is a good way to put it, like, to even almost forcing yourself to have like an accountability partner, somebody that is going to keep you in check. And when you bring that to the light, then going forward, I think we're married men, so we talk about it in the form of our wives, but you can bet, I think in most cases, that your wife will be checking in with you to see how things are going forward and maybe provide that accountability. Because I think to a certain extent that we all need accountability in our lives. And when we're left unchecked, that's when things tend to spiral in ways we don't want them to.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just anything, like if you've been abusing PayPal, like cancel your PayPal account, cut up your credit card, limit your access to the cash. It's really no different than any other addiction. And I think especially when you start tapping into and talking about like breaks and razzes and doing all these things, I mean, you had mentioned it before, it is straight up gambling. So I work in a prison and we had this woman, she was like a 78-year-old woman, and she came in and talked to the inmates, and it was a gambling presentation. So she ended up telling like a 20-minute life story about how her husband passed away like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and she gambled his pension completely away and then gambled her own pension away. And this was all at like the age of 70, 75. And she's been in recovery from gambling for a couple of years now. Now she worked for the state going around talking about gambling, and she lost everything. She lost her $250,000 home, her,
wow.
Yeah, her pension, everything. So point being, razzes and breaks tap into that same exact mindset and same exact energy. So I think it's easy for me to say that because I don't do any of those things. I don't gamble. I also don't buy into breaks. I bought into a single break when I got back into the hobby because I still didn't even fully understand what it was when I bought into it. It was the card. I walked into a card shop and the card shop owner was running a break and asked me if I wanted to buy into it. And people were coming in and out the door to pick up their cards from the break, drop them off money. And I was just like watching it. And I'm like, I'm going to jump in on this. And then after the first break, I'm like, I just paid $60 and got like $8 in cards. I'm never doing this again. And I never have.
I like breaks and I do it occasionally, but I think the key to breaking and to participating in breaking is to understand what it is. Like it is gambling. And the first rule of gambling is the house always wins. So what everyone likes to project is, oh, I hit this $10,000 card for someone. But in the meanwhile, the breaker made $70,000 in the process of doing that. So they're the real winner, right? Yep. And that's just the kind of the secret behind it. And again, I'm not anti-breaking, and I don't think you are, Troy, either. But if you go into it knowing, hey, I've got $25 to spend or $60 to spend, and I just want to hang out with people and chat for a while, and I know I'm going to get $10 in cards, and then there's a 0.2% chance I might hit something big.
There's an appeal to it, I guess. I mean, when you describe it like that, it makes me want to go break.
Yeah, well, but if you know what you're doing, but we've just seen people that are chasing the win and just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and that win doesn't come. And I think this is a good time too, Troy, and I'll let you chime in here, but transition a little bit from, okay, what happens? What do you do if you're sensing you're getting into trouble? The trickier part to me is because a lot of this is so community based and we get to know people and we're all spending money together, right? What if you sense, whether it's just something you sense in a friend or somebody that you're in a community with or something like that, or they'll give like cues like, oh my God, I got my credit card bill, I have to take a break or something like that. Is there, and I think too, where I get really twisted up in knots in this, Rob and Troy, is I do believe that, hey, we're all adults and adults should be able to make decisions. And so you never want to pry into somebody's personal life. But I also sometimes think that saying nothing is not good either, because you almost have an opportunity to help someone that might need it. And so, and I'm sure in your therapy and in your practice, you've deal with this in lots of different circumstances, but I'm just curious to know, it's like, well, what are some practical ways or good ways to maybe ask people if they might need help?
I think coming from a place of, I think if you're not close with them, I think that could be a really hard thing to broach. But I think about some of my close friends, if they were to ask me, I feel like I would be much more willing to be like, yeah, man, I got to chill out. Yeah, man, I do. So I think just kind of having that open communication with your friends is always a good thing. So even if you don't notice any signs in them and you're okay, even just having the conversation like, listen, if you ever see me get out of hand, step in, please, because I might not bring it up.
Do you think that local card shop owners or breakers, or I don't know what you call people that do razzes or anything like that, that they have almost in some cases an ethical responsibility to step in, almost like a bar owner, in
100%.
They're can't overserve people if they feel like someone is spending unhealthy, that they should. So it sounds like you think they should step in and say something.
Listen, the card shop that I was going to, right? I had talked to the owner before, and this was like during the height of it. He's like, oh yeah, I've had to cut people off before from breaking, it's just how it is. And then as the hobby kind of came back down to earth a year ago, 9 months ago, I was in this break group. And like I said, I only entered one break and that was really it. But I would see him not being able to fill breaks all of a sudden. And he'd be like, yo, where are my heavy hitters at? And then he would start tagging people like, let's get this break filled. Let's do this. And I was like, yo, this freaking guy is just like preying on these people. Like I wanted to speak up and say something in the group and call him out. But then I knew I would probably immediately get the comment deleted and blocked. I did want to just step in and be like, you got to chill out with tagging people. because you're basically pressuring them and encouraging them because you decide to put all your chips in the breaking basket and quit your job last year, and now you're kind of screwed. You're going to prey on people that you know have basic gambling issues. I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way for sure.
Do you think, Troy, that card shop owners and breakers have an ethical responsibility to jump in those cases?
I would definitely think they have an ethical responsibility to jump in if they see someone becoming an issue. Now, I don't think they should go out of their way to be looking into everyone's lives or anything, but if they start seeing comments or hearing stuff someone's saying, you can probably put signs together and figure out, because you never know. Maybe the person does have $1 million and this is all they want to do is spend their money on breaks. But you can kind of probably get a little bit of insight if you know your customers very well and start seeing some trends or some issues or just how they speak. And I definitely think they should speak up if they think something's an issue, because I would rather be a good person than be driven by just making money.
Yeah.
I think, too, it's worth saying that all breakers don't act that way. Like a really good friend of ours, Breezy, is a very successful hockey breaker on Whatnot. And I've seen him countless times when someone says, oh, I really wish I get in the break, but I don't have the money. He'll be like, that's good. Just hang out. Just chat with us. You know, we're happy you're here. You don't have to buy spots. Like, he will go out of his way to let people know that it's okay versus putting that selfish sort of pressure on people to make their bag or make their money and damn the costs to their customers. And I think, too, and Troy and I have talked about this, that we've seen other breakers that not only like ethically and being a good person, but there's breakers that just burn their clients out because they just charge their credit cards. Like, you know, from like a strategic business perspective, maybe take a long-term approach to, and that client might be buying spots from you 2 years from now instead of just maxing their credit card out over a 4-week period and they're gone forever.
Well, and I think you guys probably saw what happened with, what was the guy's shop in California that ended up getting into that PSA scandal?
Oh, was it Max's or something like that? Or
I know what you're talking about. I can never remember any of the names of anyone involved, but I know the exact thing you're talking about.
I know, unfortunately, there's like another shop that has like almost literally the same exact name. I think just an apostrophe is different. I always get them kind of confused, but like you look at situations like that, and I think a lot of these shop owners, and it sounds like this guy did too, during the boom, they were expanding, buying up bigger stores, doing this, doing that, spending a lot more money on wax, spending a ton more money on wax, because even as soon as 2 years ago, people were looking at wax as a really good investment, especially with some of these rookie classes like Luka, Trae Young, and then football, Josh Allen. And I think a lot of these breakers and hobby shop owners, once prices started going down, they stopped being able to look like Robin Hood and stopping guys from spending in their breaks. And then they kind of started feeling the squeeze financially. So now that's when you're tagging people. So I think it got to a point where most breakers were not thinking long term. They were thinking week to week.
Over leveraging themselves, just like you see in the general economy when we go into a recession, right? And it tends to affect, a lot of people end up going bust because when times were good, instead of just reaping some minimal profits or the profits they had, they said, well, let's double down, triple down, quadruple down, and leverage everything to the hilt to the point where you no longer have a financial safety net anymore. There's something happens where the markets or the sport car market just don't keep going up, 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 and up like we're seeing now with a lot of stuff. Well, we're kind of getting close to the end of our time. And like I said, hopefully this gives people stuff to think about, and whether you're just starting to think about collecting or you've been doing it for a while. And I don't know, Rob or Troy, do you guys have anything from a just conclusion standpoint or wrap up, or what we want to leave people with, I guess, as we end this conversation?
I can go first. I'll make it very short. There's a lot of good in this hobby. There are also issues that we have to watch out for. I think this conversation is important, and I'm really glad that Rob joined us to go over this stuff, because obviously, like we've said, we're not experts. If we did this by ourselves, no way would we provide the amount of great information that Rob did. So I just want to thank Rob. Yeah, we are idiots. And I just want to thank Rob for stepping up and having this conversation on this show.
Listen, I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys knowing me to an extent, and I think kind of like utilizing my strengths, with me really being comfortable, at least discussing this kind of topic. And you guys were super prepared, though. Let me say, before the show started, you guys were probably some of the most prepared individuals I've ever gone on their show. Because, I mean, you guys were just right on point with sending out the link, sending out like a loose outline of what we were going to do. You could tell everything was well prepared, and you guys just knocked it out the park. So I think if you keep performing at this level, pretty soon I'll be working for you guys.
Well, okay, we got 2 seconds, but if you want to psychoanalyze us for a minute, Troy, I'm sure you'll agree, this is the least amount of preparation we've ever done. When we do our Gong Show episodes, which we do twice a week, I'm not kidding you, they are a minimum of 14 single-spaced pages and usually around 17 pages.
Wow.
Because a big part of ours is research, and so we do a lot of, it's not quite, but it's almost scripted out in a sense. We go through a lot of paper.
Well, I tell you, that's awesome. You guys were incredible.
Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And before we leave, where can I know you have a show, you have a large social media presence. Where can people learn more about you and listen to your show and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so really just search Sports Card Therapist anywhere on social media or anywhere that you can consume content. You'll likely be able to find me. Best place to message me is always going to be Instagram, though. That's definitely where I'm the most active.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And it was great to meet you, and can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Likewise. I appreciate you guys. Keep up the great work, guys.
Thank you.